Good evening and welcome. Bonsoir et bienvenue. My name's Danielle McDonald and I'm the CEO of the Ottawa Public Library, and I'm very happy to be here this evening. Kwe Kakina. We believe it is important to acknowledge that even as we gather virtually, we are on the unceded and ancestral territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. Nous rendons hommage à toutes les Premières Nations, les Inuits et les Métis, leurs aînés, les ancêtres et leurs importantes contributions passées et présentes. We want to thank our partner in organizing this event, the Ottawa International Writers Festival. And tonight, as part of our National Indigenous History Month programming, bestseller, author, and internationally renowned storyteller Richard Van Camp is here virtually to discuss his latest book, Gather, in which he shares what he knows about the power of storytelling. Richard is the author of 5 collections of short stories, 6 baby books, 3 children's books, 5 comics, and much more. His novel, The Lesser Blessed, is now a movie with First Generation Films, which premiered in September of 2012 at the Toronto International Film Festival. Before we begin, I do want to take this opportunity to invite you to join us this Wednesday, June 23rd at 7:30 p.m. for Art in Our Ancestors, an intergenerational discussion about Indigenous storytelling and artistic practice with Algonquin artist Mary Bracoupé and her father, Simon Bracoupé. Remember that you can always visit the Ottawa Public Library website to find out about our upcoming programs and to access the wide range of content and resources that come with a library card. It is now my pleasure to introduce Sean Wilson from the Ottawa International Writers Festival to say a few words. Thank you and have a great evening. Merci et bonne soirée.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm also broadcasting from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. And I'm thrilled to welcome you all to the final video event of our spring season and to thank our friends at the Ottawa Public Library for their ongoing collaboration. I also want to thank all of you for supporting authors and booksellers through these difficult times. Our official bookseller is Perfect Books on Elgin Street, and I know wherever you are right now, there's an independent bookseller nearby who would be more than happy to sell you some great books. Our entire spring season is available online, free and on demand at writersfestival.org. We'll be back with an amazing fall season that's going to kick off in late August and run through December. But everything is there, online, free. Just click play to be connected to a world of ideas. If you enjoy this event or any of our virtual programming, please consider making a charitable donation. Your financial support will allow us to continue to bring you the world's most interesting authors and thinkers, even as we continue into our second year of pandemic programming. Our host tonight is author Karen McBride. Karen is an Algonquin Anishinaabe writer from the Temiskaming First Nation in the territory that is now Quebec. Crow Winter is her first novel. It's amazing, and I can't think of a better host to close out our spring season than Karen McBride, so let's give a warm virtual welcome to Karen.
Oh, Jimmy Rich for that beautiful intro, Sean. I feel like I need to gather myself again. But I'm so excited for this evening to get to chat with Richard all about storytelling. I am also joining you from the unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory in Ottawa. And so tonight I would like to say Mino Pijuak to Richard. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Chimigwich, Masi Cho, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. It's such a beautiful, beautiful collection of stories.
Thank you.
Tidbits and throughout the whole book, I just felt like I was hanging out with family, and it just brought me so much joy and that connection to community in so many different ways. Stuff that like I felt like I could see my community in that as well. Like there's just so many beautiful kinship ties I think that we all share. As First Nations folks and as anyone reading this kind of book. So where did the idea of gathering this collection come from for you?
Well, I just want to say, Ani, Buju, Chimigwich, thank you so much for being with me. Karen, you and I have only ever shared the stage once, and that was a long time ago in the before times. So it's lovely to see you again in your home. And it's a real pleasure to be here for the Ottawa International Writers Festival. So Masi Cho for having me. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Treaty 6 country in our home. And we're in Treaty 6 territory. It's a beautiful day here. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. You know, moonrise today is at 5 o'clock Edmonton time. So as we talk, our auntie, the moon, is going to be out this window. I should be able to see the auntie by the time we're done our visit. So where did the idea come from? Well, let me just locate myself. So I was born and raised in 1971 in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, which is the most beautiful little town in Canada, in my opinion. We are officially quadrilingual, and what that means is Chipewyan, Cree, French, and English are spoken at any given time. As you know from the book that we're the nickname capital of Canada. We're the Métis capital of the Northwest Territories. We're the gateway to Wood Buffalo National Park. We're the pumpkin capital of the Northwest Territories. So I grew up in a time of storytelling. I grew up in a time where families visited families and brought the gossip and the good news and the medicine stories and the love stories and the makeup and breakup stories. And I think we were raised in a time, we were very lucky because in 1971, when I was a baby, we only had CBC. We had one channel. It was black and white. It was, a lot of it was French from what I can remember. So I grew up watching, well, not really watching, but being very aware of the Tommy Hunter show and the Jolly Green Giant and the Polka Dot Door and Sesame Street. I remember when Buffy St. Marie was on Sesame Street. I remember the Beachcombers. I remember Jessie. Everybody had a crush on Jessie on the Beachcombers. Everybody wanted to be Jessie on the Beachcombers. So I was born in a time where pop culture was just starting to be born at the same time where our oral traditions were very strong, right? Because we are, an oral tradition people, right? We pass on our stories, our traditions, our values, our protocols, through story and through talking and visiting. So the idea came to me kind of by accident. And what happened was, as I grew up, Karen, I had the best childhood. I had the best teen years. We had a dungeon master, Mr. James Crozier, moved to Fort Smith when we just started high school. So we were really into Dungeons and Dragons.
Amazing.
Wally's Drugs brought in Heavy Metal Magazine and Savage Sword of Conan and The Warlord. The Bay brought in all Star Wars Micro Machines, the Micro Collection, G.I. Joe, He-Man. So we had the best of the South and certainly the best of the North. At the same time, we had the new TNN, we had the movie channel, we had HBO, we had Cinemax, we had Nitrax. That was really the birth also of videos and music and radio. So again, best of the North, best of the South. And as I got on in years, I had a great time growing up. But when I was 19, all of my fellow graduates from PWK High, many of them just took off to the South to go to college, university, and trade school. And I was one of the few 19-year-olds left behind. And that was when it started to hit me that I really didn't know who I was outside of Fort Smith and WT, happy-go-lucky. And one day I saw the handy bus they needed drivers, and they were advertising on the local handy bus, the local green screen, we called it. And I remember there were these flashing letters, and it says, handy bus drivers needed. It says, if you have a class 5 license and no criminal record, come on down and talk to Cheryl Common at the health center and be one of our drivers to drive our beloved elders around the community to their appointments and to bingos and to visit their friends. And that was when, I'm sure, Karen, you've had this too, where it's like your soul light finally shines, like Rudolph's nose shines for the first time. And that felt good to me. That felt like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive the elders around my community because I want elders in my life. Because my own grandparents didn't speak any English. They lived in Betchwako, which was 13 hours away from Fort Smith. But the elders in Fort Smith had watched me grow up. They knew my parents. They knew me as a paper boy. They knew that I pumped gas at Kelly's gas station for 14 bucks an hour. They knew I worked at the Slave River Journal. They knew me, they knew my family. So I had an in. And I showed up and I was at the health center and I said, hello, Mrs. Common. She says, hello, Richard. I said, I'm here because there's an application to fill out the the handy bus driver thing. I've got my class 5. I don't have a criminal record, I promise. And she handed me the keys. She said, you're it. You're the handy bus driver. So there's a bingo tonight. And you're still staying at your dad's 2823. And I was like, yeah, get ready. The phone will start ringing about 6 o'clock. And here's a little map. And here's the elders that are going to be calling. And you're going to be very busy. And Karen, it was the greatest thing I ever did. I felt like that was the baptism and welcome I needed into the heart of Denendeh, the Western Arctic, because I got to drive Irene Sanderson, Helena Mandeville, Seraphine Evans, John Evans, you name it. I got to drive the 1% of the 1% around our community. And I got to drive our royalty around. I got to drive our matriarchs around. And then one day I was driving Maria Brown, who was Chipewyan. She was a bush cook for my dad for the college. She was many things to many people. She was also curing asthma in our community using goose grease. Very powerful woman. And I was driving her around one day, I think to the Northern Store to Kaiser's. And as I was driving, I think it's a 6-ton handy bus with a wheelchair lift. She goes, did I ever tell you about the time I died? And I said, what? And she goes, no, I died. She goes, I just woke up one day and I was so tired. And I thought, well, I should just have a nap in my sewing room. And she said, I laid down in my little bed in my sewing room and I passed away. She goes, and I saw heaven. And she said, do you want to know what heaven's like, Richard? And I said, yes, I do. And I was driving and she said, heaven's like West Edmonton Mall. She said, there's floors. The colors are like the Northern Lights. Everyone's happy. Everybody's got black hair. You know, people that you recognize from a long time ago, they're all shaking hands or visiting. And she says, I saw my late mom, my late dad. Their hair was black. And I saw my late husband, Jean-Louis. And Jean-Louis saw me and they were all waving, walking across the bridge towards me. And Jean-Louis pushed my mom and dad out of the way. And my dad said, well, go get her then. And Jean-Louis he was a giant. He started going really quick towards me. And I jumped up in the air. I wanted to land in his arms. But as I was running and jumping, a voice said, Maria, you can't stay. You still have work to do. And she said, oh no, she said. She started running even faster. And she jumped up in the air and the voice said, Maria, you can't stay. You still have work. And she woke up and she was in her little cot in her sewing room in Fort Smith. And she said her blood had turned to slush. Her blood was just cold. She must have passed away for quite some time and took a while for everything to get going. And when I heard that story, Karen, I had another one of those soul lights go off. And I realized, my goodness, nobody's recording our elders. Nobody's taking the time. So I actually went out the next day and I spent $21 at Radio Shack and I bought this little micro. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these. These were big in the 80s. These were big in the 80s, I tell you. This was the one I bought. And I ended up going back the next day to Maria Brown's house. And I said, Maria, I said, there's a lot of people who are really hurting. There's a lot of people who are really missing their loved ones. And I'm wondering if I could please record you. I'd love to record you. And I'll transcribe it word for word. And I'll print it up and I'll give it to you and I'll take your photo because the world needs to know that heaven is like West Edmonton Mall and everybody's happy and everybody's visiting in their home. And they should know about the voice telling you that you still have work to do. That must mean that we're all here for a purpose. We're all here to work. And she says, okay. And actually, Karen, not only did I get to transcribe it and take her portrait and spend a couple of years with her as the handy bus driver and as a friend, we actually digitized that story. And if you go to Richard Van Camp's SoundCloud, you can actually hear in her own words. And if you buy Gather, the link actually, it's all transcribed here.
And afterward,
the link,
right? I think.
Yeah, in the afterwards, you can see the actual link. But if you go Richard Van Camp SoundCloud, you can actually hear her, Maria Brown, in her own words, her own beautiful voice, talk about what heaven was like. And that was when I found my purpose. That is really was my beginning as an archivist, as a listener, as a storyteller in training. And it took me 24 years, but I've been recording 24 elders who shared miracle stories with me. And then about 6 years ago, the University of Regina Press got in touch with me and they said, hey, we're working on a new book series called Writers on Writing. How'd you like to write about storytelling? We've sat through a couple of launches that were supposed to be for books, but you end up telling more stories than reading from your book. And I'm like, well, they can read the book any old time. So that's really how it began, was with Maria Brown telling me that one story. And then me realizing that I wanted to live my life. My work here on earth this time around is I am born to honor. I'm born here to transcribe, record, digitize, upload, really remind people not to wait. Record your elders now, record your knowledge keepers now. So even something as lovely as a recipe or a gardening technique, or how you braid your hair, or what you do with your baby's belly button nub when it falls off on day 12 or 14. What are your traditions? Do you have a tradition? And if you don't have a tradition, maybe this is the generation to start doing some research on what your community does with the belly button nub, or with baby's first haircut, or baby's first tooth that falls out. Or there's so many opportunities to welcome that ancient magic of your community, your family, your people into your own home and into your own daily life. And that's really what Gather is about.
Oh yeah, and you can feel that running throughout the entire book. I think there's just like miracles run through it like lifeblood. It's what the whole book is, and I think it is such a gift and a gem for all readers during this time. So it really Chi-Miigwech for this beautiful collection. Like I sat there and I was smiling the whole time I read it, and honestly, it was like radiance.
Oh my goodness. We're going to come for you, Karen, for a blurb. We need your good words as we go into another printing. Also, if I could just say, years ago, I was the guest editor for Spirit Magazine. I don't know if you remember Spirit Magazine, but it was Harmony Rice, and they did such a beautiful job. And I said, well, I want to do the miracle issue. And it was there that Thompson Highway, I approached Thompson because he had told me a story. One day we were getting ready to hit the stage about falling down a flight of stairs. And it's actually the first story in Gather. And so Thompson had just finished performing this huge concert opera piece. And he was so excited to see his family after the show that he forgot to take off his performance shoes, which have no grip whatsoever. So he was still in his tuxedo, still had his beautiful little piano shoes on. And he was coming down a huge flight of stairs. And in his haste, he actually slipped and fell over the side banister. And as he was falling, he told me, the first time I heard it, he thought, this is it. Those words, this is it. I can't believe it. Like, this is it. This is how I leave the planet. And as he fell, he was actually caught by 4 angels, and he was placed gently down on the floor. And one of the brothers was his late brother. And that story stuck with me. And so we published it in Spirit Magazine. And then when we were putting Gather together, I really wanted the perfect opening, because I find now as a parent, when I'm standing around at a park and I don't really know any parents, and I'm an extrovert, I'm a visitor, I'm a northerner. Remember, northerners are the hobbits of Canada. All we want to do is cook for you and pamper you and gift you and honor you and make you laugh. You got to open with a big story to get the sense that this person is a major player and they're going to give you something back, right? And I find that we're all starving for stories. We're all starving for magic. We're all starving for, have you ever met a psychic? Have you ever saved someone's life? Has anybody ever saved your life? Did your baby come to you in a dream before they were born? I find in Edmonton, which is a very kind city, everybody's always got time to visit. I spend more time visiting with parents at night at King Ed. We're going to be there tonight, and you can bet I'm going to find an unwilling suspect at first, and I'll hit them with a great opening story. And then they're just like, sorry, who are you? Now I have an in because I've written baby books. Sometimes they'll say, you're the guy that wrote Welcome Song for Baby or Little You, or we sang, we got that book, dude. anyways, so I just want to thank all the storytellers like Thompson Highway for giving us permission to share that miracle story, because I find we all need miracle stories, because I feel that, you know, the creator, the universe has scattered us all over this beautiful planet, this beautiful sacred planet of ours. And it's stories that pull us back together. It's stories that unite us, that remind us that we're human together. And that's what I love doing most, is sharing stories. So, you know, as a touring author, I'm sure you realize very quickly, because you were touring before the pandemic, if you are doing, you know, let's say a 6-city tour in 8 days, you're reading the same passages over and over, because that's what sells the books. But what I found in my 24 years of touring is it's actually, you can read the book later. I'll tell you a little bit about the book. I want to tell you about where I'm from. I want to talk about growing up in Fort Smith, it's a palace of miracles. There have been so many miracles that have happened in Fort Smith. And I found that Gather was really my opportunity to show just how proud I am to be from the Northwest Territories, just how proud I am to be from Fort Smith. And I'm really glad that it connected with you. And I hope that it inspired you to get well, maybe times have moved on. You got this on your phone and a whole lot more. But the other thing I wanted to share with our visitors, with our honored guests, is that every single one of us has a super HDR camera on our phone. Every single one of us has more technology than Orson Welles did when he made Citizen Kane. You've got a super HDR camera, you have a voice recorder, you can make movies, you can edit movies, you can upload to YouTube or SoundCloud, TikTok, you name it. So there's really no excuses. And remember the old saying that every time an elder passes, a library closes. So if you have something missing inside of you, you don't have a name, you don't have a ceremony for something, this is also a book about the protocol to bring gifts, to adopt an elder, to adopt a knowledge keeper, and say, like, I'm a brand new dad. I really need, what is the protocol for the belly button nub or laundry? How do I do my little boy's laundry in a respectful way? How do I respect this little being that's trusting us with their lives? And I find that there are always elders who are willing to step up, because they see how pitiful I am. And they say, my goodness, that guy, he really needs a lot of help. Let's take him under our wing. He'll keep feeding us and honoring us in a beautiful way. And it's a really beautiful way to adopt the family that you're craving, the family maybe that you didn't have growing up. I've adopted many aunties, many uncles, many grandparents along the way. And it only makes me a better son, a better husband, a better father, a better friend, to have this big extended family that I just love to keep spoiling.
For sure. I mean, there's connection in everything. And once people start talking, I think we realize how important it is to us. I mean, in the book, you say our survival depends on connection. And I think there's been no truer time to see that realized than this past year and a half.
And Karen, if I could say, we're so lucky to have the technology that we do, because
Absolutely.
You know, today I've called home Fort Smith twice to talk to my dad, to talk to my uncle. We did a FaceTime event with my mom and my brothers to say Happy Father's Day, to hear my mom. She's going to be 70 next month. I'm going to be 50 in September. To hear my mom at 69 say Happy Father's Day, my boy, to me. Well, come on, this is beautiful, right? And for us to Zoom tonight, we've got this incredible technology. So there really aren't any excuses anymore not to gather the family medicine that you need. You know, pick up the phone, do a FaceTime event. You can see when people are on FaceTime, right? So if you say, I really need help with designing my next tattoo, and I want to do it our way, well, so-and-so's got it. Why don't I give them a little ring on Facebook Messenger? And chances are they'll pick up and they'll be like, Karen McBride? And you're like, yes, hey, I really need your help. I'll send you 10 copies of my books. I'll pamper you, I'll honor you, but I really need help with something. Well, who's going to say no to you? You know, it's pretty hard to say no to somebody who's showing up in a good way with a beautiful heart, who just wants to learn because they never had that opportunity.
That's so very true. And I love that you include protocol, both like formal and formal and informal in the book. And I think that's so important because often we get really nervous about asking for help or for those teachings, and it can be really intimidating, especially as an Indigenous person who maybe wasn't in a big part of their community, or you want to reconnect. So I think it's a really big gift that you offered in this book to help those folks out. So thank you for that. I feel like I'm going to spend the whole time just being like, I love this book. It's so good. But really
well, thank you. That was 4 years in the making. I mean, the idea was 6 years ago, and then it was just 4 years of deciding which of the 24 miracle stories I've been collecting, which of the ones were actually going to make it in, where we weren't repeating themes. So I'm grateful to everybody who stepped up and said, no, you can share. So to give you an idea, if you haven't read the book, I also had the opportunity to interview, after I heard Maria Brown, Chipewyan elder in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, talk about heaven. A couple of years later, I was at the Anauken International School of Writing in Penticton on Okanagan country, in Okanagan Territory. And I got to meet Glenn Douglas, who was one of Canada's most decorated Indigenous soldiers. So Glenn was 65 in 1992. He was our elder in residence. And I had about 8 stories from Fort Smith that I'd transcribed, and I'd photocopied my elder portraits, and I had permission to share them from the elders from Fort Smith. And I approached him one day and I said, Glenn, uncle, I said, and he'd seen me around enough. He knew that I was from the Northwest Territories. He knew I was from a long way from home. I said, uncle, I said, I was wondering if I could book some time with you. And he said, come on in. He said, he came into his office, and I said, uncle, I've been collecting elder stories from the Northwest Territories, and I have permission to share these. And I photocopied the stories I had. I'd like to give these to you from the North. Oh, thank you, he said. And I said, I'm just wondering, uncle, would you consider telling me a miracle story? And he said, oh, I'd love to. And I said, I'm serious. He goes, no, I'm serious too. I'll tell you a miracle story. And I said, are you serious? And I carried this around, this little backpack. And I said, I've got a little recorder here. And if I said, we don't have to do this today, but if you want, I said, I'd love to record you. I have some tobacco here to honor you. I also believe in paying storytellers. He said, wow, that's okay. Now we're talking, Junior. He says, okay, what else you got? So I said, well, I'll gift you with more as time goes on. But I said, here's what I'd love to do. I said, any miracle story that you'd like to share, I'd love to record it. I will go home and I'll type it up word for word. I'll print it up. You can go through it with your wife, Leslie, and you guys can take anything out. And if you want to add anything, you can add anything that you want. And I can make photocopies for you, and you could give it out for Christmas to your family or for your birthday. And I'd love to take your portrait. I can take pretty good photos. And he said, okay, yeah, let's do it. And I said, okay, when? And he goes, well, right now. I said, are you serious? He goes, yeah. He said, how many batteries you got? I said, well, I got lots. And he goes, how many of those little tapes you got? I bought a 12-pack. I wasn't letting this guy
you were prepared.
Get away, because when an elder shows, right, you could be sitting there for a long time, right?
Absolutely.
And he said, turn that sucker on. He says, I'll tell you the miracle story. And he gave me the story of a lifetime. So, and this is in the book as well. And it's also on SoundCloud. You can listen to Mr. Glenn Douglas. So Glenn Douglas had survived I didn't know this at the time, but he survived World War II. He fought and survived in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And he opens with a date, and he opens with talking about being hit with a concussion grenade in the Korean War that killed him. And Glenn also saw heaven. He was walking in his full military dress, but he wasn't wearing any shoes. He was barefoot, and he was walking in heaven. And he talked about everything he saw, the flowers, the grass, how it was all manicured. And he talked about the voice. The same voice that spoke to Maria Brown, who was Chipewyan in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, was the same voice, I'm assuming, with the same message that said, Glenn, you can't stay. You still have work to do. And Glenn didn't want to come back because he'd seen so much as a soldier. He had so much guilt. They call it survivor's guilt for seeing so many firefights and being often, sometimes, one of the few that made it back to base. And the voice said, Glenn, you're going to be told many times you will never walk again. You will walk again. Have faith. Glenn, you can't stay. And he woke up in his own body bag. He woke up in his own body bag. Imagine waking up in your own body bag. His legs were destroyed. And he recovered. He did learn to walk again. And he has the tape is about what it means to be Indigenous today. And it is so poignant. It was the perfect story. And the whole time I was there, this has been my whole life where I can't believe I'm lucky enough to be in the room when somebody's sharing a miracle story. So I recorded it with this little guy right here and transcribed it, took his photo. His wife was actually, Leslie was a professional photographer, and she took way better photos of him than I ever could. So when you see the different manuscripts I have, you'll see the portraits she's taken of him over the years. Now, Mr. Douglas has passed, but he did give us permission to share the story. His family did. And so you can listen to Maria Brown talking about heaven on Richard Van Camp SoundCloud. You can listen to Glenn Douglas in his own words talking about seeing heaven. And then I got to interview Anna Tenasket a couple months later, and she talked about having her life saved by the little people. There were 3 men coming for her when they knew that she babysat all by herself. I think she was 15 in Vernon, British Columbia. And it was the little people that saved her life. And she shared that story with me. And again, it was just one continual baptism, one continual welcome into the great mystery in such a beautiful and loving and trusting way. And I was lucky because I got to talk to Anna a little while ago, and I said, is it okay if I digitize your story? She goes, absolutely. I'm a grandmother now. I want my grandbabies to hear the story I told you in 1992, Richard. My goodness, we were so young back then. So the good news is, Karen, is that when you do this, you have these stories forever. You have them forever. Their family has them forever. Future generations have them forever. And maybe somebody who's really hurting, maybe somebody who's just washed in sorrow, who's about to give up, will discover something that maybe you have and another storyteller have put out into the world. And they'll say, okay, this is what I need. This is the soul medicine that I needed. I want to be a part of this too. I'm going to start recording, and I'm going to start asking for help, and I'm going to start adopting and gathering the spirit medicine that I need to go through my life in a really beautiful way and give back all I can. I know that's why we're here. I know it with everything inside of me. There was a great wildlife officer named Bernie Bergman, and he shared with us the great Northern saying that a true Northerner always leaves each person and each place better than they found them. And I think that's a really beautiful way to be. It's a beautiful way to be remembered in the world. It's a beautiful way for your children to see you, that you're cleaning up. We didn't break this glass, but we're going to clean it up because someone with sandals or an elder or someone might, kneel down to tie their shoes, and that could be the quick end to a good day. So we can do it. We're lucky enough to be healthy. Let's clean up all this glass for others. And my boy's really starting to catch on. He's starting to turn into a gifter like us. People come by, and I really find that as a compliment. Like Eileen Beaver said one day, the longer you stay at the Van Camps, the heavier your arms will be when you get back to your car. That's a good way to be, right? Because you go, well, my goodness, we have too much. We got, today we had Jordan Abel came by with his wife and their beautiful little baby. And I noticed that every time we were going in the house, we kept finding more things to give them. And that's the way it should be. Spoil them, honor them. Right? Because the more you give, the more you receive.
Exactly.
In good energy and good memories.
Yeah, like paying it forward and all that. I think in the book you say, you're a good storyteller when you keep having to buy Tupperware because you just keep giving people food.
That's right.
I love that so much. It's so true.
Well, when I lived in Vancouver, for probably 6 years, maybe longer. I had the same Tupperware 6 years because nobody ever really showed up to eat. Nobody ever took leftovers. We have gone, I swear, for 4 different whole new sets of Tupperware. None of our lids match because it's not our Tupperware, right? Because we were in the before times, we would go to feast, we would go to ceremony. We would leave with food. We would, we'd spoil people when they came to the house, right? We always make too much. That's the way to be. And I think that if you're running out of Tupperware and you're hitting the yellow and blue makes green freezer bags all the time because you're just gifting more soup and more stew and everything else, I think that that is really beautiful. You're sharing from your garden. You're sharing what you can. You're giving what you can. It's a beautiful way to be in the world. And I know that I'm not alone. I know that there's lots of givers in our audience tonight.
Definitely. So in the book, you have a whole section where you give storytelling tips, which I think were so helpful for me. And I wish I had them when I had started doing my book tour in the before times, because they were so helpful. I feel like I was taking notes when I was reading it. But in particular, you talk about like reading the room and reading the audience and like figuring out how or what is the right story to tell at that time. So how has that changed for you, or has it changed for you during the pandemic and how we meet virtually now, since we can't see our audience and all that?
Well, we've never stopped visiting. We've certainly have maintained our social distance and stuff like that. I think it's always about body language. I think it's always about being, respectful. You don't want to trigger anybody. You don't want to astound somebody so much that they lose the power of speech. But I think that I'd heard from somebody once that we point our belly buttons to people we trust. Did you ever hear that before, Karen McBride?
I don't think I have, but I feel like it makes a lot of sense.
So next time you're talking to someone, watch if their belly button's pointing at you, then they're with you. But if they're looking a little bit, the belly button, in Clichan, they say sabuquia for belly button. If their little sabuquia is not pointing at your sabuquia, then you got a situation. You gotta rein them in a little bit. So I always feel that I always think, how do I want to leave this person? I don't want to trigger them. There's something called smearing, which we talk about in the book, where, like, my brother's a doctor in Whitehorse. He is desensitized. So what he brings to the supper table sometimes is not what we're equipped to hear. You never want to smear somebody. You don't want to offend anybody. You don't want to, this is really a chance to connect with someone, to walk away. You want to bring the good gossip home. Do you know what I mean? When I come home, I want to say, sweetie, I just met somebody who arrests people for a living. She can put anybody in an arm bar in T-3 seconds. That's the stuff you want. You want to go home with, like, really interesting stuff. So that's when I open with parents. It is the big questions, because there's a technique called fishing. So how old's your baby? And then I usually go, so have you ever met a psychic? For some reason, that's the opener. You'll be surprised how many times people go, actually, yeah. Or I'll say, what's crazy is my little boy came to me in a dream before he was born. I saw my boy before he was born. And 9 times out of 10, someone will say either that happened to us or my mother dreamt we were pregnant before us. And then you've got an in. You're not going to be talking about real estate. You're not going to be talking about the variance. That save that for your lawyer. This is a chance for us to be human together and share the great mystery together. There was a saying, the Lakota said, may the great mystery always put a sunrise in your heart. And I think that every time that we are visiting with somebody at a playground or in a lineup, it's really your chance to illuminate their heart, right? Put a sunrise in their heart. Share a good story. Like our friend Dwayne Sinclair won $1 million. And in Portsmouth, Northwest Territories, he won it in Yellowknife right before Christmas. And he just shares that story about waking up. He had a dream he won $26 million. So when I can say, Karen, did I ever tell you about my friend Dwayne Sinclair, who won $1 million before Christmas? See, look, Shirley Adamson is saying, one of our guests is saying, my youngest daughter came to me in a dream. So Shirley, you and I would get along very well at the playground, because we would just exchange miracle stories. So everybody likes hearing stories about psychics. Everyone likes hearing stories about people who have won millions, Lotto 649, but they were told in a dream they were going to win millions. That's what happened to Dwayne. Juicy stories like that. I think we're all craving the juicy right now. So bring the juicy. Don't bore people. Also, you can start with you know, my wife and I were just starving for a series on Netflix. That's safe. That's an in, but you're fishing, because once you get a sense of what they're into, then you can go, so have you ever met a psychic? Right? And then that's it. We got a bridge for life here. You know what I mean?
Yes, and that's such a good opener. Like everyone has either a yes or a no.
Yeah. So maybe open with your top 3 questions. Have you ever met a psychic? Have you ever known anyone who won money with Lotto 649? And then did you dream about your baby before your baby was born? And if the answer is no to all 3, time to ditch them. No, they got no juice. They want to talk about real estate. They want to talk about, you know what I mean, the variant. Those aren't your people. Go find your people. Go to the other side of the playground. Find your people.
Exactly.
There's somebody
figure
usually,
it out.
well, there's usually some parent out there or some person who's so bored out of their tree. You're the greatest thing that's ever happened to them today, because you're bringing the juicy.
Oh,
and the next time they see you, they're going to want to come and talk. They're like, so what else you got? You told me the psychic story, the Lotto 649 story, the alien story, the Sasquatch story. You're where I want to be, because I have never heard stories like this before. Or we used to tell stories like this a long time ago. It's nice to meet somebody who still believes in the magic of the world. Be that person. Share that magic, those good stories, those miracle stories. That's a good way to be.
Absolutely. I do want to take this a second to remind everybody that you can use the chat function or the Q&A function if you have questions for Richard, and I will look at them and hopefully remember to read and ask them if I'm not completely entranced by everything that Richard says. But please do ask if anything comes up, because we're talking about some really great stuff here. If you have a miracle story, pop in.
Aliens, Sasquatches, psychics.
Yeah, those are my faves too. So please, absolutely. Yeah, ghosts, anything. I've seen one. There's one on our property. Not here in Ottawa, but at home. Yeah, on the res, there's one like right next to my mom's property, which is my grandparents' old property. And there's like she's a white lady, and a few people have seen her besides just me. So I feel like I have a little bit of confirmation. I don't have to be like, oh, I was just scared that night, which I was, but I think it was legitimate. So yeah.
Another thing I like to do is whenever we have somebody in our house, we had to upgrade to tell us, I always ask people, what's the strangest thing you've ever seen in somebody's house? And you guaranteed work will stop, and often workers need to debrief. They'll tell you the most incredible stories about, or also the mail person that comes to your door. I hope you know their name, and I hope that you make time for them, because they have seen a lot. They've got their finger on the pulse, and they'll tell you stories about your own street. They'll tell you stories about the history of your house. Some like the first lady that we had, Caroline, she'd been delivering for, I think, 23 years before she retired. So she knew the house before ours was even built. And she was just this historian, this custodian of wealth. And we know so much about our street and the lot that our house now stands on. And so I really just want to put it out there that, the diocese, a lot of Roman Catholic dioceses have got photos and negatives and songs and recordings that often are not digitized. And if you have a lot of time on your hands, why not go in there like Paul C. Sequasis and start recording? Because as you know, your cell phone in the notepad section has a super HDR scanner now that you can just digitize your photos, upload them to Facebook. That's what I love doing. I love going into just a warehouse of photos, even if it's not my community. And I'll say, well, look, this is the when Chrétien was the minister of so-and-so, he came up to the Northwest Territories, or the Pope's visit, or the Queen's visit. That's stuff that people want to see, because when you upload something like that on Facebook, there are people who are looking in the crowd and say, oh my God, Mom, is that you? And then you'll see in the comments, was I ever that young, my girl? Oh my goodness. So if I said, Karen, I have a picture of your grandmother, taken in 1937 when she was a young lady. Wouldn't you want to see that?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I love to do. I love to upload. Now, you have to get permission, of course. So if you go to Richard Van Camp YouTube, I had heard for years that my grandmother, Melanie Washi, had sung a love song at a competition, a talent show in Betchico in 1993. And I called CKLB, CJCD, CBC North, and I said, you got to have it. There's got to be an audio recording. And they would say, Richard, we've gone through everything. We don't have it. And I thought, boy, if I could just get that to my mom. You know, our grandmother passed years ago. If I could just gift this to my mom to hear her mother's voice 20 years after she passed. Oh, that would be the most beautiful Christmas, because we don't need more stuff. We don't need more stuff as you get on in years. You want more experiences. You want more journeys, more feasts, more memories, more laughter, more songs, more prayers, more words, right? So anyways, long story short, I would just about give up and say, well, maybe it wasn't meant to be that I would be someone who could give this back to my family. And then I'd meet an elder and they'd say, did you ever find that recording of your grandmother? 9 years, Karen, 9 years I hunted for this audio recording. Now there's a gentleman named Frankie Black. He's Clechaw from the Northwest Territories. He just lives over there. And every time that Frankie and his partner would come by, I would gift them with moose meat. I would gift them with buffalo meat. I have so many books from the Northwest Territories I gifted to them because they're Northerners. This is what we do. We spoil, right? With Indigenous people, it's all about the sharing. Anyways, one night he knocked on our door. It was quite late. And he handed me a stack of DVDs. And he said, this is for you. Have a good night. So I have a little DVD player here. So I put it on and, I'm watching drum dances and tea dances and love songs from 1993. Very beautiful, nice. I'm seeing some of our elders in there, Elizabeth McKenzie, George Blondin. And then one night I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think I've watched all these. Maybe he's got it. So I called him. He wrote his phone number. I called him. I said, Frankie, did you ever get that recording, or do you have that recording of my grandmother, Melanie Washi, singing that love song at the talent show in Betchico in 1993? He goes, well, it's on DVD number 6. Your grandmother is sisters to my grandmother. Richard, that's why I gave it. Didn't I tell you? I'm like, DVD 6? I said, I'll call you back. So I hung up. I watched DVD 6 again, 2 hours, nothing. I call him. I'm like, Frankie. He goes, I'm so sorry. I got the DVD here. It's at the house. I'm watching it right now. And I'm like, the DVD? He goes, oh no, it's a video. I'm like, you have a video of my grandmother singing? He goes, oh yeah, do you want to hear? I said, no. I want you to come by tomorrow at 6 o'clock. I got buffalo meat. I will give you buffalo meat. Let's do a trade. I'll give it back, but you got to let me download it to my computer. He goes, no problem. I'll be there at 6. So next day, I'm so happy. I got buffalo meat. He and Therese show up. I give him the buffalo meat. I grab that DVD and I say, I got to run upstairs. 9 years. I go up, put it in. There's a video of my grandmother singing. Now, my friends, I'm going to tell you, you can go to Richard Van Camp on YouTube and you'll see a picture of my grandmother, my late grandmother, my Etsi, Melanie Washi, or her Indian name was Mani. And there's the video John Gahn took. We have his permission to share it. John Gahn took it in 1993 and he gave me permission to share it. And I got to send that to my mom. The video, it's beautiful. And my brothers and it's been shared so many times. So it's another reminder, never be afraid to ask for help. If you've heard there's a recording or there's somebody on ancestry.com doing your family tree, go to them, honor them, gift them, cook for them, do what you need to do, because it's important, right? That we will have this forever. There's a reason why for 9 years I kept hearing about this. And the other thing is, I'm not a techie at all. So when he gave me the DVD, it was an older format that they don't really use anymore. I had to go to my friend Lee Skidmore, who is brilliant. She's a techie. She's incredible. There's nothing she can't do. And I called her. I said, Lise, I've got a DVD of my late grandmother singing. She said, I'll come by tomorrow. I'll pick it up. I'll convert it for you. I said, great. And I bought myself a subscription to YouTube so I could have a YouTube channel so I can start uploading beautiful things for other people. But you always go forward with permission. So every time I upload something, you'll see that when you see my grandmother's uploaded with permission from John Gone, and with utmost respect to Lee Skidmore for converting it, because I certainly don't know what I'm doing. But never be afraid to ask when it comes to anything, because there's a whole pile of people out there who are sitting on gold mines of cultural, you name it. And they're just waiting for someone with a good heart to come along and say, I'm starving for what you have. Is there anything I can do to help you? And let's share this together. Oh my goodness, it's great. I've yet to be turned away from anything when I show up, because I have a sense somebody has a story that's really important that they want somebody to record for their family, for future generations, for their community. I'm really proud of the good work that's been done in my lifetime. And I look forward to recording more elders for more families with permission so that they have it. So that at the end of my life, I'm 49 now, I think it's safe to say I'm halfway home. At the end of my life, people will say, Van Camp, he was a little bit of an oddball, eh? A little homely, a little pitiful, looked like the cops got to him a couple times. But you know what? He had a good heart. He gave all he could. My goodness, that guy recorded so many stories for so many families, so many communities, so many nations. We will have, as part of his legacy, we will have this forever. So everybody watching right now, get on out there and start recording your family members, record your knowledge keepers, even techniques like gardening, darning, sewing, weaving, hunting, trapping fish. Record it now, because I always suspect we're 3 knowledge keepers and 3 language teachers away from becoming bankrupt. Do you know what I mean? Like, we rely on the same people over and over and over. And we assume they're always going to be here because we never want them to leave. Sooner or later, their work is going to be done and they're going to be called home, right? So record them now, because there's somebody going to be coming along who's next in line as a culture keeper, maybe as a language teacher, who will come to you and say, do you have those recordings of how they used to talk? Like in our dialect, they had a way of saying this. It's a beautiful thing to say, actually, yes, you name it, I've got it. I'll send you the files. We have that forever now. Thank goodness. Now, Karen, I suspect you have some questions you want to ask.
I do. I have one here in the Q&A from Martin on Facebook. Martin has asked, how successful do you believe or know yourself to have been in encouraging others to record their nation's traditions and elder stories?
Well, I'm very lucky. I don't know for sure if I have inspired anyone to do anything that I'm saying. I'm trusting that there are people out there. I've led enough workshops and I've led enough Zoom sessions in the last year, especially as we got closer to publishing Gather, that hopefully there are people out there doing what I'm doing, because I know I'm not alone. In 1991, when I was at the Naukin Center, it was Jeanette Armstrong who told us there's an archivist in every family. There's one in every family, and you really have to honor them. When they come looking for the old Polaroids and the 35mm negatives because they want to digital, let them. When they have binders at Christmas that nobody wants because it's the family trees, trust me, in 20 years, you're going to be carrying down a wall trying to find that binder, because these things matter after a while. These things matter. If someone could find, let's say you're baptized, if I could say I found your baptism photos in the diocese, wouldn't you like to see it? Wouldn't you like to see who was holding you and who were the witnesses? If I said I found your parents' wedding pictures in the diocese, wouldn't you want to see that? Or again, I always go back to the grandmother in 1937, because I found a photo of my grandmother in 1937, Melanie Washi, when she was a young lady before she was a mother. And again, in a fire, what do we grab? Maybe our phone, and if there's time, you want all the photo albums, right? That's the stuff that matters. That's the stuff. And the menus, right? This Christmas, my wife was baking her great grandmother's cookies for Christmas. And that's the magic that we can bring forward, right? That's the stuff that you want for your own children as time goes on.
Exactly. It's preserving history and personal history, and just like how you eventually, after 9 years of searching, got that song like that someone else had. Like forever. You can be that person for someone else. And it's so important to preserve these beautiful treasures that our elders and our knowledge keepers.
And if you're on the Kimuch and you want someone, why not? It's not beautiful to say, I'm going to sing you my grandmother's song that she sang in 1993 at a talent show. I've learned this song and I'm bringing it back. That's how crazy I am for you, baby. Wouldn't that be something?
Ole, I don't know.
That's right. You leave with a perm. You couldn't believe it, right? So that's what you want, is to not just but to live it, to live that the best history forward, to bring the best of your community, to bring the best of your family, to bring the best of your ancestors forward for your own life daily. I think there's pride in that this is who we are. This is what we do. These are our ways, and I know why these are our ways, and I'm proud to share this with you. That's beautiful.
Absolutely. So beautiful. It makes my heart sing to hear these kinds of stories. And just to give you a quick little example of how important this kind of archiving and storytelling and story keeping is, I know people who work in land claims who are talking to elders, improving like land use and using our elders' stories and helping the community in that way too. So like it is so important that we do these things for ourselves and also for our communities. So go out there, do the homework that's in here. There's a lot of homework, but I promise it's good homework if you're reading this, which you absolutely should if you haven't already. I feel like I have a lot of homework I need to do, but like I'm excited about it. I promise, like I said, it's good homework. And I think we're getting close to the end here, but I do want to bug you about one technical thing, because I have had very little luck in storytelling and writing this year. Do you have any tips to offer, or have you found it difficult maybe returning to fiction, because this is nonfiction? So how has it been for you as a writer during this time being creative?
I'm lucky because I get up at 4, sometimes 5 in the morning. My boy gets up at 6:30, so I know I have 2.5 hours every day. It's on me. I'm responsible for filling my love cup. So Karen, do you write to music or do you write in silence?
I usually write to music. My background is in music. I have an undergrad in it, so I need to have it there and to create that world.
So I think you owe it to yourself to create a soundtrack, a new soundtrack that is going to hypnotize you and get you back into your work, because you can hypnotize yourself through your music. So I write to music all the time. So it's finding that new music, that new medicine. Research. I mean, maybe it's time to show a little bit of what you're working on to that special someone, to that knowledge keeper, or to that detective. I don't know what your new story is, what your new book is about, but the story is the boss. And you know, Eden Robinson says you got to find your sweet spot. So are you the greatest writer after midnight? Are you the greatest writer first thing in the morning like me? Are you a weekend writer? Do you need, a Starbucks with a laptop and headphones and the hustle and bustle to focus? Do you need the library? You've got to tap into that ancient you that you used to write Crow Winter. And I know that, Crow Winter was inspired by your father's passing, right? So what is inspiring you for this new book that you're working on?
Oh, wow. Well, the new one is like a fun, more YA story for me. And it's like return to my childhood and kind of like honoring like biking around the res and playing kick the can, being out until it's blue outside, being like, oh no, my mom's probably going to yell for me soon. So I want to return to that with my next.
Chris Labonte, who, when he was with Douglas and McIntyre, said, Richard, I'm going to give you a line, but he said, this isn't my line, but I'm still going to give it to you. He said, all great literature is about a compelling character who has a problem. So Karen, who's your compelling character and what is their problem?
Great. That's great advice. I think for me and for everyone else who's listening, if you are a storyteller or a writer, and I promise you we all are in our own way, since we are at the last minute of our chat, I would like to take an opportunity to thank you so much, Richard, for all of these beautiful stories, for getting to sit down and chat with you again. It's just such an honor, because that time it was in Vancouver actually that we got to present together. I remember just being in awe, of your amazing moccasins and the beadwork of the Stormtrooper one. Still, I was gonna ask if you have them nearby.
I got them right here. It's a little too hot today. Yeah, the Stormtrooper moccasins.
Amazing. Yep. Still have that picture on my phone because I was like, look at these. And so it's just an honor to get to chat with you and share stories and hear you tell these stories. I just feel so captivated. So Chi-miigwech for that, and for helping us round off this wonderful season of the Ottawa Writers Festival. This is the last program in the spring virtual session of the Ottawa International Writers Festival. So on behalf of everyone here, myself, I would like to wish you well and to have a good summer.
Yes, Masi Cho. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Bless you all. Bless your families. And please remember, all storms pass. We're going to get through this storm together. Bless you all. I can't wait to see you in the after times when it's safe to do so. All the very best. Happy Father's Day to the fathers out there. Masi Cho, Ottawa, for having me. Masi Cho, Karen McBride, Chi-miigwech, and I can't wait to read your new book, When You're Ready.
For sure.
Take care, everybody. Bye.